And we're back to talk basketball with Mike.
So yes, probably the key matchup, one of the best key matchups of the year was, the lady and the men's Panthers teams going to TSU. All right, let's start with the ladies. Key win 61-56. However, if you look at the game between the numbers, if you look at the data points, neither team played really well. So why am I saying that? Well, let's look at a few team stats. Of course, Kennedy Paul, she was below her league usual or miserable. She had 13 points, maybe 5 rebounds, but the team still won. Here's the kicker. Remember last week we talked about their performance. They shot 8% from 3-point land. Well, this time they shot 5.29%. It's a data point. That's 1 of 17 from 3-point land. And they, the only saving grace is they had 62 rebounds versus 48 rebounds. So yes, they performed enough to win, but going forward, they've got to pick it up. Turnovers, 21 turnovers. And they almost handed really TSU the game. It's just that TSU, played poorly enough themselves to not take advantage of some of the mistakes. So, they were at least 18% from 3-point land, and field goal wise, they were only at like 25%. So you had the usual leading scores for PV, for the Lady Panthers, but going forward, they know where the gaps are. So it was an entertaining game because it's always PV TSU. The crowd was into it. I think by the time I got there, it was like the end of third, fourth quarter, and the crowd was the energy was building up, as Dr. Kabil, kind of pointed out earlier. But, you got to ask a little bit more out of the Lady Panthers. The other thing is they only got 4 or 5 points from their bench, whereas the
That is not good.
Yeah. So challenge issue.
So let's project that to the tournament. Are either one of those teams going to be eligible for the tournament? And if so, what are their prospects?
Ooh. Yeah, both of them will be eligible for the tournament. I think the good thing is they get away from Prairie View at least does. They get away from Jackson State. Yeah, who's the number 1 seed, who may have struggled a little bit of late, but then they came out last night and put up like 118 points.
Yeah, they undefeated in the SWAC, aren't they?
Yeah, the problem that you have, frankly, with Prairie View is they play really hard. Let me put that out there first. These young ladies play extremely hard, and so they're well coached, but fundamentally, they do not play long stretches with that fundamental that they've been taught. And as you said, for the 3, they went 1 for 17. We come back with that. So they just do not shoot very well from the 3. And so unless they get hot, and you're talking about needing to do that for 3 games, it's going to be a tough task. I think they can get on the run and get in it. But if they can get to the championship game and make some magic, pretty good. But to credit more, before we get into the tournament and their seeding and everything, is the way they beat Texas Southern is to that physicality we're talking about, they out-rebounded 62-48. Texas Southern only shot 18% from the 3, but they made sure they got those rebounds, and they were able to get out on some fast breaks and get a couple of easy baskets. And that, to me, was essentially the difference in that game.
So that means when you hustle and just try hard, you can come up with a W.
That's a point to be taken.
Yeah.
So Coach Sandy Pugh understands. I think she has, her focus is for recruiting is to find herself some 3-point shooters.
Yes. Yeah, a little more height and certainly some shooters, period. Wherever they are on the field, some shooters.
So PV family, if y'all know some young ladies out there in high school who can shoot the thing, please send them to PV's direction. We need them. What did our young men do last night?
So the men's game, far more exciting. And I'm just going to go ahead and lead off with saying that really the men should have won this game. By all intents and purposes, they had every chance. With a little more than 2.5 minutes, they had a 9-point lead at the 2:12 minute. they had an 8-point lead, and they gave up enough turnovers and I think it was 6 straight points in about a minute to TSU to lose that game. If you look at all statistical categories, let me just say Jeremiah Gambrell, 27 points, he did the thing.
He been on fire.
Problem is with PV, and here's the other thing, free throw percentage. They were at 85%, TSU was only at 62. They started off the game at 5 minutes, 14-5, down 14-5. And they clawed their way back into this game. It went tit for tat. It was very chippy. And sooner or later, there was usually a key free throw, even though their free throw percentage was better than TSU. They shot at 85%. TSU only shot 62. There were key moments where they really needed a clutch free throw, and they went 1 for 2. That happened in the fourth quarter. That was really kind of the thing that hurt them. They out-rebounded TSU, even though on the boards toward the end, especially the last 2 or 3 minutes, TSU got key board rebounds on the offensive and defensive end. And if you look at both teams compared, you'll say like TSU has an obvious size advantage on the board, but PV rebounded them. But there were just those key moments where you had folks, you needed a clutch free throw or a clutch rebound, and PV just unfortunately did not get it. And they came up with the loss, 78-77. They lost that game in the last 2 minutes of that game. They had every opportunity to win that game. So as such, they will play, Alcorn State, number 1 seed, which is not a bad matchup for PV because I think they split the matchups with Alcorn State. If I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Bill. So that may be a better matchup, but you're kind of shaking your head. The other thing is PV only has like 10 people total. So you got your starters and you got your 5 people on the bench. You look at TSU's bench, they got a plethora of folks on the bench that they can pull for. Going into a tournament, that is always key, is having depth in your roster. PV does not have that depth.
I mean, how far do we go in that 10? Does he play the full 10 or is it only a 7-man rotation?
7, unless you get into some foul trouble, he might go 8.
Yeah, I saw 8 last. I counted.
Pretty tight rotation that he trusts in terms of going into that game. And so Mike said it best. The good thing is about the matchup, you're exactly right. We went 1-1. You know, we won a 1-point game on the road at Alcorn, and then we lost the half court from Big Bend Park on the Texas map here at home. So it's not like this is a game that we don't match up well. And then you go into the 4-5 matchup, which is Texas Southern, as well as Southern. We split with Southern. Obviously, we were 0-2 at Texas Southern, but very close games. Maybe we have a turnaround last year where we beat Texas Southern twice in the regular season, but when we face them in the tournament, they got us back. Maybe we can flip it around again and get going. I think most people would say Prairie View is one of the most dangerous teams in the tournament.
Yep.
Because they got the heart of a champion, they got a championship coach, they play hard, and they've shown that they can play with everybody. This is one of the weird years in the league for me. I think the tournament actually is probably about 6 teams deep that can come out of this tournament. It's all about matchups. Who do you get and who do you match up well against that team? Mm-hmm. And the other thing that that Prairie View can do, they can play with anybody. The question is can they close games, particularly, again, like we said about the women, 3 straight games? That's going to be your question. I see that they can get a couple of games in there, find a way to get some key plays, but I'm concerned about them being able to do it consistently because they hadn't done it all year long about getting in the tournament. But this is a team that can get hot and has all the key components, except for maybe free throws down the stretch to win in the tournament.
Yep. And then talking about closing, I think they need a go-to ball handler. Jeremiah Gambrell is good, offensive, but a go-to ball handler, you need somebody to close it because you want the ball.
Mike, we're gonna have to go and get that in the offseason.
Yeah. I was about to say
we have Cox, and Cox is great on the board. He gave us 5 rebounds when you talking about our ability to rebound. But his strength is not necessarily the ball capabilities and being able to go to the bucket and get you a bucket late in the game. One, he can go to the bucket. But he's not really a threat from the outside. He doesn't really shoot that. So people are going to play back on him, so it's going to be hard for him to go to the lane. And then the other concern you have with Cox, not to belabor the point, but even if he gets fouled late, he's not the purest in terms of the free throw shooting line. You got Gambrell, who's the balling thing, but he's not naturally a point guard.
Nope.
And so if you play him physically, and late in games, referees tend to swallow the whistle, which is one of the things that happened at Texas Southern. It was a very physical game, particularly late, and just wasn't getting the benefit of the calls. And, they were close. In most games, you don't do that. Would you want those calls? Yes. If you're a Prairie View fan, you're probably going to say they should have been fouled. But if we're more like what we see generally, you don't get those calls late in the game. And he's not of the stature that we're used to seeing from our point guards that won championships the last 3 or 4 years. So he's a little easier to get off his balance. And so he likes to rotate around, and late in the games, people stick with you a little more. So it's harder for him to get a shot or go to the bucket. So those are the things that give you a little worry. But overall, in terms of how this team plays defense, and they're going to play all the way through. Shout out to Douglas Daniels in terms of how he played in that game. They left everything on that court. So it's nothing you can say about Prairie View in terms of team that is playing like champions in regard to what they've seen the last 2 years. They just miss a couple of key things. And sometimes it happens in terms of recruiting classes. Obviously, we have some guys that got put off the team for whatever reason. And that's kind of the things that we had to deal with all year long that I'm sure the coach will get in the offseason, but we'll have to deal with it this year.
Yeah, and I was over there with the TSU folks. They clearly said they don't want to face this team again. It was an overtime loss at PV. And then this game, they clearly were like, we do not want to play this team again. It's about matchups going into it. Gambrell, he basically faced the Jordan rules. They found out he was the hot hand, and he got beat up. I think he was limping at the end of the game. That's how physical the game was.
Yeah, I think when it comes to tournament time, it's going to take Gambrell and Daniels to put this team on their collective backs and carry them to the finish line. And someone's going to have to come in and step up and make a couple threes and some free throws. But it's going to take those two to take it home.
That's the recipe.
So tune in. I'm seeing here Wednesday, March 9th, number 1 seed Alcorn State versus number 8 PV, 8:30 p.m. Central on ESPN Plus.
And then for the women, Cherie's not dead, March 10th. The following day, Thursday, you have Prairie View going up against Alabama State. So it's
Alabama,
a 3-6 matchup, which is at 11 a.m. and it's also on ESPN Plus. Yeah. Great job, Chanel.
And Gatti will be doing the SWAC tournament as she just came off doing the SIAC tournament.
So she called me last night during the game with the Commissioner Moore, just giving a little shout out. So she's doing the doggone thing, representing Prairie View, representing 1876 Sports and Culture. So they are taking care of her. I like that.
Love it. All right. And we'll be right back to talk about March.